Ladies and gentlemen, so let us start. Please make haste.
It's time to start. Simon Battisti, school streets, Tirana, Pristina, and many other cities to come. Simon, the stage is yours. Applaus samozřejmě, prosím, ano, ano.
And please, a round of applause for Simon Battisti, our next speaker.
Thank you. Thank you very much. When they told me I had to speak after Jeanette Sadeh Khan, I almost threw up. But thank you very much to the organizers. It's really an honor to be here, and it's really fantastic to be part of a conference that's organized by people who do similar things to you, because there's really just such a great focus. So really, it's great to be here. I'm going to talk exclusively about the Tirana School Streets program that we've been working on for the past 3 years today. Just a little bit of context about where I am coming from, where I work. This is Tirana in 1988. You'll notice not very many cars on the ground through the center of the city. And it's not a car-free day. This is just a regular weekday. And the reason is because car ownership was prohibited. So cars just were not an issue. However, there were roads being built, and there was just a lot of basically what we would consider now to be pedestrian space. Fast forward, 2023, very common situation. You have essentially inside of neighborhoods a situation where children and caregivers are constantly sort of wading through a sea of cars every time that they're out in the public realm. And this is basically given rise to a situation of extreme fear and hyper overprotection on the part of parents. Basically, we were talking about this the other day, there's not a ton of deaths recorded, but probably that's because just people don't really do much outside except sort of lean against the wall. So the work that we do really focuses on early childhood and caregivers. And that's really important to mention up front. And the reason is because 85% of the brain development we will ever have in our lives happens before the age of 3. And this is really an essential point to make about how we build thriving childhoods, how we build thriving middle schoolers, how we build thriving high schoolers, and people who become adults and become parts of our society. It all begins in the very early days of life. And we're so happy to have a great group of guests with us here today from GEP, 10-year-olds who are coming on an architecture tour in town. So I'm really happy to have you here as part of our audience. Kids under age 3 are really vulnerable all throughout childhood, but really especially vulnerable in those first 3 years. And so the effects of the harms essentially stick with us throughout our entire lives. And so it's really, our work is really all about the built environment to protect and nurture kids and caregiving at this age. So when we talk about caregiving, we say, you know, there's a lot of literature and research around this now, and says we know a lot about what creates what we would call thriving childhoods. There's a lot of, you know, an essential part of this is bonding. How do we create really strong bonds between caregivers and infants? Well, there's a lot that we need to know. You know, caregiver mental health is a huge part of this. Healthy feeding practices are essential. Speaking, serve and return with an infant is really how infants develop their brain architecture, which will, again, stay with them for the rest of their lives. Storytelling, singing. And then we say, okay, well, that's all great, but how are we supposed to do that? That's the issue. Where are we supposed to do that in the public realm? Like, am I supposed to stay home all day? Because maybe there I can do it, but we all know that that's terrible for caregiver mental health. We all know about the social benefits of being out in public space with a lot of other people. So the public realm has to be able to support this. This is the issue. And essentially, we started working on this issue, and a really big part of this is play. Kids really need to have daily access to play. Play is a huge part of how we build that brain architecture and a lot of how we get socialized, how we learn to play with other people, which we're going to hear a lot about from Alice later. We did a survey, and this was really fascinating for us in the very beginning. What kind of play is closer to home? So, you know, nobody lives close to a public park. Very few people live close to a playground either. 62% said the street in front of their home, which is interesting in the first place that they consider the street as a place to play. Now, we said, where do you prefer to bring your child to play? Of course, it's not the street. The street is absolutely a place of danger. So also interpreting this a little bit, you might start to think that, okay, people are playing, the street is a place for play, but it's hyper dangerous. So this is already quite a not good situation. Of course, everybody wants to be in a public park. Of course, everybody wants to be in a public playground. But the thing is that the street is where you really can get access to play every day. And kids need that access every day. Caregivers need their kid to be able to play every day, release all that energy, et cetera. So that's where we're at. And what's so interesting, this is a woman that we met at a School Street pilot last year. And she really reconfirmed this whole survey. We said, where do you usually play? She was here with her baby there, and we said, she was like, this is great. Like, this is right outside of her front door. And we said, where do you usually play? Where do you usually bring your kids? So she has a 3-year-old at home at the time, and she said, there's a 5-minute walk. I don't go. It's too far. Because I'm cooking at my house, I've got this other kid who's coming back from school, I've got all this stuff to do, I've got to go shopping, all this stuff. She can't make it 5 minutes walk to play with her kid an hour a day or even 30 minutes. That is a really important insight about access to play outside your front door. Well, this is what the streets look like. Okay, so again, cars everywhere, street, even when they're not there, street is a total place of danger. And, you know, again, what can we expect from caregivers? Why is she not letting this kid play? Like, why isn't this kid playing? She's terrified. And it's not her issue, it's our issue as planners, as city officials, decision makers, et cetera. This is our issue. We can't blame her for this, not even close, okay? And so, you know, so we have this. Kids on screens. It's just an absolute universal phenomenon at this point. And we all so much wish that it wasn't the case. But again, what alternative are we giving anyone? This kid is being like way too intimate with that screen right now at such a young age. This is the brain architecture that's being created, is this relationship to a screen. Well, it gets really much harder and harder and harder to get that kid to be comfortable in the outdoors and playing in other ways that we know are much more healthy. So we started working with the city of Tirana about basically bringing play closer to where people live. And this is the vision here. We want to essentially, so we've been working on transforming schoolyards into public parks and connecting them with school streets. Schools are very nearby, you know, everybody, this is all of the primary schools in Tirana with a 300-meter radius around them. The vast majority of people live within a 300-meter radius of a school. So as a first step, and we talked a lot about how do you get started today already, yesterday. As a first step, I believe in school streets very much as a great place to begin. And I'm going to tell you why, but basically we've started with the School Streets program in Tirana, which is now scaling up, and now in the 3rd year, we've just gotten a commitment from the city to tender 20 school streets in 2024. And so the story that I'm going to tell you right now is sort of how we got there, and all of the different kind of types and phases and stuff that we did along the way. So 2 years ago, we started building streets like this, finding places around town that had just an absolute overabundance of asphalt that, without any regulation at all, basically cars take over and do whatever they're going to do. And so in a really, really fast way, we would go in and basically just sort of bring the street back to the basic level of compliance, we would say. This is just how, how it should be drawn in the first place. And you'll notice that we even, unfortunately, but to the benefit of the people in the neighborhood, indeed, included some parking. Sort of tried to find this balance in the neighborhood where we could really demonstrate the benefits of that extra space in comparison to, and balance it out with, not taking away too much up front. At this point, this program, we did 7 streets like this, and in a span of about 4 months, just all over the city, just bam, bam. And the recipe was very simple. This was the trick. The recipe was super, super simple. So we have these really heavy concrete bollards. We're using lime wash on the ground, so basically liquid chalk that you can paint with a brush, and then events, programming afterward. So first ingredient, the bollard. The bollards everywhere all over Tirana. This is such a typical scene. People use them all the time. They're just this way to kind of cut away a little bit of pedestrian space. So we started doing that too. Basically, cheap. This bollard was made by the guy who makes those things. Basically, we asked him to make a mold for us. Each bollard cost 40 euros, and without any steel reinforcement. The point was just that it was really heavy. It's quick to install, okay? So they got brought in on a big truck, sometimes at night, sometimes in the day, put a strap through it, drop it down on the ground in a row, and all of a sudden your street is relatively protected. Super heavy. I love this photo. So here's this dad. First day, come in and check it out. Yep, okay, pretty heavy. Yep, works, okay. So yeah, just like then, in the construction process, really versatile, just really good on a kind of impromptu construction site to just have a big heavy thing to hold other stuff in place. So that was really useful. Of course, because of the dimensions, it's just an invitation. Everybody just wants to go on top of it. All kinds of uses, again, just like the basic kind of ergonomics of this thing. Dimensions for sitting, of course, too. It's about 45 centimeters off the ground, quite ideal. And then, when there's businesses out front, they just do all kinds of stuff with it, and it just makes a lot of sense for them too. Okay, the other ingredient, so lime wash, what we call in Albanian is called gulchere. This is a super traditional material in the Mediterranean region, sort of lots of places. It's extremely cheap, so cheap. Like you can buy, it's almost free actually. You can really buy as much as you need. There's no limitation. Virtually, and it has this really interesting bonding qualities with masonry. Not asphalt as much as what we learned during the process, but because there's petroleum in there. But in concrete, it bonds very well, even on the ground, and it actually lasts through rains. So the idea is that we make kind of a blank canvas. So we don't really we paint the ground white, and then open it up to basically kids come by, and this becomes kind of a way for them to really start to influence the space. Heat reflection, we started to try to make an argument about sort of, whiting over the black asphalt for sort of solar gain, deflection. And then really like what was cool about it, we thought, is just, the typical urban streetscape in Tirana is so visually chaotic that the idea here was actually to really reduce that and actually just paint everything kind of with one stroke. This is 3 months later after the opening, and it's like dirty, but streets are dirty, and we really didn't mind. It felt more like you're kind of in this place, and without being sort of over-determined, it felt kind of like a good balance at the time. And then actually, Gulchere is really interesting because you can pigment it. You can add pigments to it, which is really fun. So we started doing a little bit of experimentation with color in certain neighborhoods where, just kind of like big color fields seemed like a really interesting direction at the time. And then, the other, so in terms of the events and the parties, what we did, so we bring you into this blank canvas space, this new protected space. The key here is that it's protected, of course. Second part, that the gulchere on the ground, the lime wash on the ground, gives it the kind of added bonus. But really, of course, it's programming and using these events as a way to bring people to give people an opportunity to share their opinions, basically, about kind of where to go next. You can give people surveys here. You can just have a kind of more open-ended conversation. But we found that this is a really sort of graceful form of public participation where you don't need to sort of make sure that everyone comes to a meeting on time and raises their hand and sort of tells you this thing, you know, like, which seems so often to really just be an opportunity for old men to yell at you and really unproductive, actually. So this is this other format where it's like, we're here as on behalf of the city, we're here as an NGO, we're listening to you, we really want to know where we can take this, but the question is not, should we have it or not? So this is where the participation starts, not before, not should we do this, because I think very fundamentally it's quite fair for us to say that protecting children anywhere, especially in front of schools, is not really negotiable. It's not an open question of shall we or shall we not. It is we shall, and how should we make it great for everyone? So this is the approach, and I think that the format and the cheapness of and the speed really allowed us to kind of do this process in this way. So yeah, quick, you know, really fast, and you know, somebody's still parked in the bike lane, which is really annoying. But overall, these projects just produce this big extra space where kids, you know, there's chaos in the morning where everybody kind of pours out of the gate. This is a video, if anyone can hear me. This is a really important moment for us. This is basically, you can see, this is the first day that the street is in operation, and this kid is taunting the cars. And he's basically, somebody just grabbed a bollard and put it in the middle of the lane and said, you can pass for money. He's saying, give me money, and you can pass. Toll, come on. And then, okay, fine, go through. Okay. And then they stop him again, and then kind of everybody passes. And this was a really big moment for us, I would say, because you know, again, it's like, what can infrastructure do is the question, I think, for most of us working in this realm. You know, I think there's always a discussion, depends very much on context. In Tirana, I can say that infrastructure just per se is empowering. And what is really so important about it to me is that it's shifted the power in this street. It's shifted the power from the drivers to the kids. I mean, if that's not the success of what a school street can do, you know, I don't know what is. Like, that would be our KPI. How, you know, behaviors which indicate empowerment, observed from afar. Because this is, yeah. So again, just to reiterate, you know, that kid hates cars as much as I do, actually. But I don't have to say it, because their behavior, you know, it's like this automatic kind of instinct to just sort of be like, this is my space, to claim space. And it's not, he didn't have to make any long argument about safety. He didn't have to write a memo. He didn't have to do anything. He just had that space to be. And I think for me, that's really an important kind of take on what infrastructure can be. So again, this conversation about kind of where to start. So, okay, so the pop-up, so now we move a little bit more toward the story of the first permanent school street. So around this time, we were sort of lobbying the city to transform this particular street into a permanent project. And they said no a couple times. So over the course of about a year, we first got a no. But they let us close the street and do these parties. And I swear, this picture, this is what changed everybody's mind. Like, and this is what I tell. I've been having these conversations with different people, you know, in the last weeks, and I believe so much that really what you need is one win. You really need one win. You have to persist until you get it. You know, you can't stop. But once you have that one win, a lot starts to change really, really fast. And the conversation we were having with the deputy mayor yesterday is, how do you get to that first win? What does it take to get there? Is up to you, you know, that's like, you got to figure it out. And there's a lot of different ways to do that. But, you know, a great street party in the right place at the right time with the right people going there, this spread through word of mouth through the political elites in the city as a great thing to do, and that was what changed things. We had already done a bunch of pilots. We had already gone to a bunch of schools. We'd done everything that you can imagine. You know, we did it all. But this is what changed it. And, you know, not just the photo itself, but the experience of the people who were there that day seeing this thing. And, you know, I'm a huge believer in data, of course, in particular realms and with particular audiences. Where we work, data is not that important for political decision makers around this kind of scale of project, I would say. What is really much more persuasive is smiling faces, especially on social media. But this is all that anyone really needs to see. This is very persuasive toward getting sort of where you need to go. So, and then stuff like this, you know, somebody texts you and is like, my kid misses this thing already. Like, for a parent to tell you that, you know. Now, you know, in this story up until now, like, you know, we're talking about the kids, and I'm still never asking drivers what they think. I'm never asking drivers, what do you have to say about this, you know? And you know, honestly, like, we have a mayor who believes in this work, and it's because of his political will that we're able to do this 100%. You know, it's not us. It's us giving him a good product, but it is him saying, it's okay, go for it. And so, you know, that's pretty unique. But when you have that and you really run with it, you can get really far. And so here, yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about how the project went. So here's the before situation, and I'm going to talk about drop-off specifically as a thing that need to be solved in front of schools. You can see here the condition of this street is that there's too much space, and so people are able to overtake each other, basically park in the gate. You know, this Audi, my God, just absolutely in the school gate. And, you know, you've got the motorcycle, you just got, I mean, this, you can't hear how loud this is, but this is clearly just absolutely chaos, right? Super stressful. Nobody's happy here. Nobody's happy here. So kind of any kind of fix to this, in theory, should be relatively welcomed, you know, by the majority of people. This is the other condition there, is that, and this is standard in front of all schools in Tirana, you have this kind of, corral, which is, of course, argued as a way to keep the kids safe, you know, so the kids can't run out in front of cars. But it produces this situation where it's just applied everywhere, and so you have just an absolutely useless sidewalk, right? So here's the plan, and this is how it worked. So 1.2 meters of sidewalk on either side, vehicle lane of 3.4, and a parking lane of 2.4. And basically, we just take away the parking, and we narrow the vehicle lane. So we get all that extra from the parking lane. We get about half a meter from the vehicle lane, plus a sidewalk, and we get a sidewalk of 4 meters wide. And 4 meters wide is cool, because you can do a lot in 4 meters. 4 meters is really, really generous pedestrian space. And so what is 4 meters? Well, 4 meters is this. 4 meters is, you know, walking side by side with 2 kids and still have a bunch of space and a trash can, and, you know. 4 meters is a lot of running. Running on the street would be unimaginable before this change. And this kid is, you know, fairly young, but I mean, he's super safe. Like, there's no, you know, nothing's happening to him, and he feels that intuitively also, and all of the adults around him are also feeling that intuitively and letting it happen. It's also running for big people, which is crazy. Like, these guys are huge, and they're running super fast, and you know, it's fine. It's also sitting, so waiting for your kid to come out of school, and you know, and sitting. You notice she's right next to the asphalt. So sitting quite comfortably. I mean, traffic must be moving pretty slowly for her to be able to sit comfortably like that, you know? This is a video. Sorry, it's a little clumsy. Back one, sorry. Okay, so this is just a time lapse of how that worked. So you see that, yes, it's one of those things. I think when you go there, it starts to feel pretty inevitable. It just makes a lot of sense to take away a parking lane in front of a school. I mean, it's like it's not. Now the way that this works, this is another. Oh, it's okay. Yeah, one more video. So the way that this works is basically instead of forcing everybody through that one opening in the corral in the metal barrier, the bollards are put in place, and they have a big width between them. So in theory, the drop-off line could be all the way down the street. This is a video. The drop-off line could be all the way down the street, opening the doors, and kids could filter through into the safe space and then come down. You'll see what I mean in a second. So here's everybody filtering through just this one gap. And I don't know how it is here, but a lot of schools, just one gate for the whole school. Everybody's got to go through that one spot. Makes no sense. So here we have the extra space, and everybody can come straight down. So you don't have that issue. You just filter down into the safe zone and then toward the front gate. Also, they rolled open the gate much wider. And this doesn't actually still quite work like this, although it could. Sometimes it does. Usually the traffic backs up toward the intersection and people do this thing, but everybody wants to stop on the crosswalk. I don't know why. Well, not to brag, but this was successful on Twitter. And basically, feedback that we got was just this was so impactful for the mayor, for the deputy mayors, for all the people who had given us support. Imagine that the former Minister of Education, Foreign Affairs of Ireland, randomly, I don't know him, this is the exemplar for all school streets. Like, he got that via Twitter, like that made so much sense to him. Another person says, once you see this, you can't unsee it in every street you walk past, so it's this kind of, it's so simple, but I think that's its power. Okay, so now just a little bit about how these things go. Okay. So just kind of like four steps here, basically, is to take away any excess space, maximize the protected space. And then slow vehicle movement with geometry changes. So geometry plus speed limit reduction is important, but you can't rely just on signage. Doesn't work, because then you get into this bad cycle of enforcement and policing and all this stuff, and it just really never works. So geometry's the first, and then in the fourth you come back in and work on co-creating, and that's kind of the basic thing. So just a little bit about the how. Just a little bit about the how we build these, and this is a really interesting conversation with other cities in terms of what is capital construction, what is interim, what is capital. This is kind of this is a middle ground. This is permanent, but it's not capital construction yet because it's built by the maintenance department of the city. So in 2016, the city decided that they were going to use the maintenance department to start expanding sidewalks around the city. It was a really fascinating decision, where this department, who typically would just replace or fix, repair a hole in the ground with a brick, was now in small-scale projects under the value of 50,000 euros, didn't have to be tendered. And so they could be used to expand sidewalks. And we basically got to participate in this sort of innovation that they, so this allows them to fix the city much faster, obviously. So, Tirana in 2014, it was unimaginably different than it is now in terms of the public space. And the way that they achieved that is basically this. This is the trick that allowed them to change the pedestrian space in a better way, using their own internal staff. So we got to use them too. So we got to use them for the school streets. And this is really, really important part of this story, because we're still not in the tendering, we're still not in the capital, the big scale. We want a school street in front of every school in the city, absolutely. And we have to do it, it's imperative, and that's what we're gonna do, you know, I'm like, but how and when, and so, you know, there's 65 schools in the city. To get there, we have to do at least 20 a year. Well, we can't do 20 a year with these guys, we learned. Unfortunately, I wish we could, but we never did. But it's been a really important part of the process because working with these guys has allowed us to produce a proof of concept, which then can be tendered and actually really mimicked very well by whoever wins this construction tender. So basically, so we said, you know, it's really important. We call them the school streets team. We made a patch for their vests, and we work with the same group for all the projects now. And now, you know, after 4 streets like this, they know the deal. Like, we don't, you know, the drawings that we have to make are super simple because it's maintenance. So it's really, it's like basically a lot of this work, what's so great about them is, you know, they can do everything we need. They remove the metal barriers, and we can do fun stuff. We turn them into bike racks. So this is like so cheap, you know, really, really inexpensive. And the trick is being able to work with these people on a daily basis, having a dialogue back and forth, to be able to do stuff. You know, look at this beautiful drainage. My God, you can't design this like beforehand, you know? Like, the drainage situation in every street in Tirana is so undocumented, to say it nicely. Like, there, you know, how could you possibly do drainage right? Well, you kind of have to do it in person on the ground with the guys in real time. And that's how we can then build proofs of concept and models which can then easily be followed afterward. They also can, you know, just really good at platforms. So we don't think much, you know, seating is essential, but we really think about it as seating. It's not benches, and really it's platforms, because they're so useful. You know, they just like, this is so important to have a place for a caregiver to stop and take a break and check the phone on their way in the shade. You know, this is what we need. It says, and nothing more, really. Look at this. I mean, this is one day after this street was inaugurated. So already, you know, like what it does, what it enables through its simplicity. So we say now, platforms, not benches. That's the lesson. Okay, last project now is the school block. So we just inaugurated this project 2 weeks ago, and it is really, there's 2 primary schools, a kindergarten and a nursery, and we protected all 4 streets around on all 4 sides. This is the entrance of the kindergarten. I mean, you can't see it, but like, so that's the sidewalk, you know? I mean, just absolutely, like, how could this ever happen? Well, nobody, you know, car dominance just sort of like snuck in, and the next thing you know, you have situations like this all over the city. So step 1, scrape it all back, and it's like you put in the bricks, you know, and all of a sudden it's like these kids are picking up their younger brother in this like big generous space. You know, the change is so powerful, and here it is 2 weeks ago. So you know, yeah, just simple sidewalk. You can see we left parking. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So solid waste management. So this is always an issue because, you know, nobody wants the trash cans next to their house, of course. So they have to put it next to a school, always. So a school has the huge, crazy trash bins, you know, always. And, you know, there's like a whole, it's a tough situation that, you know, just nobody can deal with it. So, and it's just, look what it accumulates. This is a super dense neighborhood. What we did really simply, we just moved it from one side to the other, and basically paved over this whole bunker and just made it like a useful space. And then look at what happens now. Like, you've got all this space, and now what happened that's so interesting is that the school previously had one entrance, and because of this thing, they opened up a second entrance on the back side to let out the preschoolers. So this has totally changed the administration and the organization of the school interior by changing the exterior space. And I think that that's really also, again, just something that we're really, it was unplanned. And this is what's so great about intervening in public space, is that you don't have to design everything and everybody's behaviors. They react to what they're given. And there's one more. This is a video. Yeah, so there they go. So, yeah, so just a much simpler space. So just a few before and afters. I'll just I'll move through these quickly. But you see, yeah, just that anatomy, that playbook, all the way through on all four sides, just creates these really different scenarios. What was so yeah, just kind of almost last point. I'm very close to being done now. Basically, the deal here is that we just heavily constrain cars. That's why this works. Heavily constraining cars. We can't let drivers. It's funny about drivers that they all think that they're so creative. Like they all think everybody, like when you're driving, you're like, I'm super creative. Like I can outmaneuver any problem. Like. And so you give them too much space, and they do that. Like that's their behavior. Their behavior is to outthink any given situation, and it's like fun for them, So when for me too, But if I'm given the space, I do that. I'm like, ooh, this is going to be clever. Watch this. So, but it's like when you take that away from them, then all of a sudden everything else can happen, and the situation here is that, again, with the baller, it's like bikes can move freely in all directions. They can do whatever they want. They can climb, jump, run, all of the things. And cars can only do one thing. Two, stop and go, but slowly too, because, I mean, look where you're going to go, The thing is about school streets that I've found is that once parents learn what's going on, they stop honking. Like honking is part of this driver creativity thing where you think that you're gonna solve the problem, Like I'm gonna honk now, that will help. But when you're stuck, it's futile. You're not going anywhere. So don't honk, and it works because they just know they're coming here, they're gonna drop off, and they're gonna go, and it's gonna take 5 minutes, but you're stuck now. You can't go back. You're like in this thing. It's like, okay, all I can do is wait, So, okay, last thing. So this was part of, so then we included this in our asphalt art project. So we had these really great artists from Tirana who won an open call and made this great project where they got all the names of the students from the school and made this really beautiful typography and painted it all over the place. And this is the part where we're really excited about. This is this last level that's so important, that really makes the place belong to the kids, especially. Again, I'm not talking about drivers, I just don't care. It's just not for you. This isn't your place. It's that simple, and it's for them. It's for the kids. And so it's really fun to watch them kind of go around and find their name, and it's just like a simple thing. More names can be added later. It's a nice kind of classic mural style approach to writing things on walls. And it's also in the schoolyard. So what's really cool is that really we used paint to unify the street and the schoolyard. So the schoolyard as a public park, requires a lot of maintenance, thinking, a lot of a new guard to work overtime. But in making the transition from opening schoolyards to the public, it's really important to just make that graphically clear. So this is part of the legibility thing where, I can put a sign on the door, but I need you to, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to make you a threshold here, which, these names from the school are sort of pouring out into the street or understood vice versa, pouring from the street into the schoolyard and making that thing. So last point here is, but how am I supposed to do serve and return? How am I supposed to be having healthy feeding practices when I bring my infant out into the public realm? Well, we just have to make spaces for it, actually, and focus on their needs. This is the key. We don't talk about drivers. I don't care what drivers say. I care about what that kid and that caregiver say. And if we lead with them, then it becomes very obvious what needs to happen with cars. Thank you very much.
Simon, wonderful. That was awesome. That was awesome. The applause is yours.